The foggy marine layer is out there at Portuguese Beach in Sonoma County. The temperature is still pleasant and there are a couple of families playing down on the sand. I've painted this beach before, but in this episode, I'm working on a new composition of the cliffs as they plunge into the Pacific Ocean. I'm excited to get painting, so let's get started. Hello, love. Welcome. My name is Jennifer Laurel Keller. I'm an acrylic and mixed media artist and instructor, and this is the Wild at Art Show. If you're excited about today's painting session at Portuguese Beach, hit the like button and be sure to stick around until the end of the video to see how this one turns out. All right, let's get into it. Okay, here's my composition. We have cliffs, ocean, and sand with some jade plant in the beginning. I'm plotting out my painting here with some sketching. At this point, the sun is showing signs of wanting to break through, but as you'll see, that is not the case later on. But I can see the horizon well at this point, so I popped it in, and now I'm doing my cliffs. And they're just these hill shapes, kind of repeated over and over as they recede into the distance. And then I make some adjustments, getting the composition just right before I start laying down color. And I'll just draw over with new lines when I want to move things around, getting the waves and the rocks out at sea and making sure it's all in place. Now I am bringing in the horizon line. This color is Payne's gray and white. Payne's gray isn't very gray, it's more of a navy blue, but when you add white to it, it makes a lovely blue color, at least in golden acrylics. I've seen some painters using oil paints and it was more of a gray color. So if you paint in oils, know that Payne's gray is actually more gray in oil paint than it is in the golden acrylics. Now I'm working on a gradient as the fog has rolled in quite a bit in this short time and the horizon line is blurred. And I'm bringing in a little bit more green as the water approaches. And as we move into the sand area, I have more of a gray. I brought in some yellow ochre. Now it's time for the cliffs. We're going to do some shadow color as a base, just to block these shapes out. So I took my sand color, I'm adding a little bit more blue to it for my shadows. And as we continue with the painting, I'll be layering over this area of color. And I added just a smidge more white for the background cliffs as they recede into space. With the fog, they're going to be lighter and a little bit more subdued. The rocks out at sea are much lighter than the cliffs up in the front. Now I'm bringing in new medium grays to dark grays for the front. As things approach, we see more of the shadow. So this is all just going to stick through. It's going to show through at the end. And then here we have some people having some fun coming from inland where it's warmer. They're in their shorts playing. I wanted to let you know that in the next episode of the Wild at Art Show, I'm painting the forest at Armstrong Redwood. So if you haven't subscribed yet, be sure and do so. Now it's time to bring in some mid-tones. So I've got more yellow on my brush. I don't wash my brush very much. I just kind of use what's in the brush, use it up with the color I'm working on, and then add as I go. And this keeps all of my colors harmonious. And working on the back, brought in a little bit more white and graded out so that those details are not as contrasted, a little bit more subdued. Now I'm adding more texture to my cliff, and I just go round and round with color, working on the grays. It's kind of like, imagine what's underneath in real life. So you've got the rock, the shadows underneath, Then you bring in some sand, which is over the rocks. And then over that sand, there's plant life and light. So I'm just working in more of the highlights now, building up in light, and then bringing some of that plant color over the top with some green for the ice plant. This little ridge was sloped in both directions. It goes down towards the ocean and then also down towards what is off of the canvas. So I'm contouring my brush marks in a way that conveys a slope. Overlapping my shadow color. And here I added more saturation, more green to my ice plant. And I started with actually doing more of a gestural brush stroke to mimic the individual ice plant clumps. But I decided to change my mind because it seemed a little bit too detailed. And I wanted to just get a hint of that ice plant. And so I started bringing in more of the red tones in the ice plant. But then I come through and decided that it was time to really just make it one mass. So I just wanted to bring in a lovely, almost magenta. There's a little bit of purple and red in this, then some yellow, and then some green over the yellow to really give it just the feeling of softness and being one area instead of lots of little details, because I am trying to loosen up with this one, and it almost seems to just melt over the contour of the rock and the ice plant. And I want to do a lot of variation here. There was so much color. There were ice plants, there were areas of plants that had gone dormant with the summer months, areas where there was a color shift in the ice plant where it turns red and even orange. Shadow colors. In this area of the rock, there was a lot of plants that had gone dormant and turned kind of a purpley gray color. And that color also works with the shadows. So I'm bringing in more purple for the shadows. And that indicates where the rock has less sand on it. It's more of a dark rock. Also, it's wet in some areas. And then there are these plants that have flowered, and then the flowers had dried out. And those were all sorts of different colors depending on the species of plant. So there's a lot of variety here. Okay, now texturizing my rocks. And a lot of these colors will work in different areas. So I can use a gray down to texturize the rock that's closer to the water, and then bring it up to indicate some shadow. And then add a little bit of white to that to make some highlights on the rocks that are in the water. And then that color worked a little bit for the plants that are quite light. I was kind of struggling with this area, so I kind of wiped it out with a medium gray, and I'll get back to that. But it needed a little bit more yellow for the sandy color, and some lightness and saturation for the top of these cliffs where the sand is exposed. It's more of a sandstone than a sandy, loose sand. Contouring down the cliff and then leveling out at the top. Now let's add more warmth. Getting my slopes nicely done and kind of breezing over the texture getting it to a nice energy, but not being persnickety about the details. I want this piece to have a lot of variety in color. And so I'm paying attention not only to what's visible in the scene, but also what makes sense as a painting. I say that a lot. So I have a discussion question for you. Where are you watching from and what's your favorite nature spot? Have you painted it? Where do you like to go? And let us know down in the comments. Okay, now I'm bringing in more shadow, more kind of like a dark medium brown, and smoothing out some of my textures. I want texture, but I don't want it to feel stiff. And every time I layer, it's adding more. You might be thinking, well, why would you even start the painting with one layer and then change it? There's a couple of reasons. One is that I start to step back from the painting. I notice what's going on. I squint my eyes just to get an essence of what's going on. And then I'll realize, oh, that color's off or something like that. Like here, I'm experimenting and I decided my color was too light. So I mix it down to a lighter gray. And this is for a certain plant that I'm working on. But another reason why I change and layer so much is that each layer supports the layer after it. So it's a building exercise in color and making adjustments. And now the fog has really come in. You can see behind the canvas, there's a lot of fog out there. So I'm blurring out my ocean, adding my second layer to the water where the mist has met the horizon. And then you start to see just a few little waves out there. And so I'm texturizing the water, bringing the lighter color down and the darker color up to create that texture on the top of the water. Very subtle in the background. And as I come forward, I start to make the texture more prevalent, more exaggerated, and you can see how out in the distance it's kind of, it's out of focus. And as we come forward, I'll start to use more definition. And also where the water hits the rocks, kind of shape up the shape. Start shaping my rocks. And adding a little bit of green as we get closer. It seems pretty universal. Depending on the light, you will see more green as you come in towards the shore. But you want to keep your light at the right value and also pay attention to your color. Texturizing as I go. Coming in between some of these rock shapes, you just have to do your best. And now I'm putting some reflection on the wet sand. There's a little bit of a change. It lightens up. And next I'm going to bring in some sea foam. Starting with a white and just barely any blue mixed in together, and then I'll do a brighter white as I build that layer of foam. But I do start with a little bit darker white, so to speak, a mix of a lot of white and just a smidge, tiny bit of the Payne's gray. Or it could have been a mix that I already had from the water with the green and white and Payne's gray in it. So I just added more white to that. Little trails going out. The foam tends to hug the rocks. Okay, now I'm bringing in more color still to my land and working on that sandy sandstone, that yellow mix. And I have like every color on my brush when I'm mixing, usually unless I need to start over with a really dark or a really light. But when I'm working those midtones, usually I'm just mixing in more of a color instead of washing my brush. But like here with this purple, I probably have dioxazine purple, Payne's gray, and just a little bit of white on the brush. And I gray it out as well with the general mix of all the colors. Mixing in more brown now to texturize my shadows there at the bottom. When I brought this inside, it was quite purple, but the light and the camera doesn't pick it all up. All right. There's also opportunities to learn with me. I'm offering plein air adventures now that I live in Sonoma County. If you're in the area or you'd like to travel here, we can talk. Send me an email through my website. I'll leave a link below. And then also I have classes on Skillshare where you can learn online. And I have a class called Plein Air Like a Pro, and also Color Quest, how to mix any color in acrylic paint, which comes in handy when you're working with landscapes. So check those out down below. I'll leave links. Okay, now I'm texturizing my rocks even more, building, just until I get it to a nice, happy place. Working in some reflections from the rocks on the water. So the water hits it and then it kind of reflects back. And that's always kind of a challenge. So I try and keep it simple. More green. Got to get those colors up. When you're out there, everything looks very gray, especially on a overcast day. So what I like to do is push my colors as far as I can past my comfort zone, and then it will start to really look like how it does to the naked eye. You have to trust that you can go further. A lot of new beginners, and even for me, you really have to take things further than they seem in real life. And then the painting will start to glow and pop, and people will start to comment, ooh, lovely colors. So this is the painting. I have a nice assortment of colors. I didn't put a lot of pressure on myself to do a great painting, and it turned out wonderfully, and it's one of my favorites that I've done so far out here at this location. Here is the reference scene and the painting next to it. And if you'd like more binge-worthy inspiration, I'm going to leave a playlist and a related video for you here. Happy creating and much love.